Well, hey, Laura, thank you so much for coming on the Moms Overcoming Overwhelm podcast. I am thrilled to talk to you today.
I'm so excited to talk to you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so I believe I was connected with you through Sarah Horgan, Simple and
Mhm.
Intentional. She's lovely. She's been
She
on
is.
the podcast a couple times. And then I saw, oh, Laura wrote a book called Decluttering for Parents. How perfect, considering it's a community of moms here that are completely overwhelmed by all of their stuff and the chaos and everything. And you, of course, have some, now that I've been reading these types of books for a decade, there's some things that I'm like, oh yeah, I know that. Yeah. And there are other things I was like, that is really interesting and kind of like a different spin that I hadn't really thought of. And I love learning from others kind of in the same field. So I'm super excited to jump in. And I was wondering if you could just introduce yourself and tell us about you and your family, maybe how you're serving others, and then like one thing you might do for fun in your free time.
Okay, great. I live in Sun Valley, Idaho, and I also consider Los Angeles home. And we spent many years living in LA, and I'll probably be spending more time there because I have two seniors. So my older son is graduating college, and my younger son is graduating high school. So this is a time of major uncertainty and transition. And I just have this feeling that I can't really comprehend what's on the other side of this as I've spent the last 22 years, devoted to my parenting and my homemaking, and also my work, which will continue. So I help people realize this powerful connection between our homes and our lives and help people create more peace and joy and love in their lives and, move positively toward their goals and manifest a life they love by, showing the simple steps you can take in your home to create the life you dream of. And I've done that through my three books and my online course and also one-on-one coaching. And for fun, I actually love the decluttering. So I'm one of those people who really gets joy from decluttering. I also love hiking because I live in the mountains and I have all this access to nature. And I know I'm giving not one thing, but three fun things,
It's
but
okay.
I really have my mind in this right now because I also love a beach vacation, which I haven't had in a year, but we're going to have after the graduation. And I just love staring at the ocean and reading like, you know, personal development type books and just thinking is like heaven for me. So I'm looking forward to that in a few
Oh,
weeks.
oh, I love that. Yeah, we have a vacation coming up to the beach, and I'm the same. I always like read nonfiction. I know a lot of people use the beach for like their fiction, like their fluffy
Mhm.
fiction, and I'm there with my personal development stuff with my phone on the Kindle app, and I'm highlighting like the entire thing.
Okay, so we're totally
We're
aligned. Yeah.
totally aligned. Yeah. Oh, well, that's awesome. So I know we were talking before we hit record about how you work with your sister and kind of some of the background there, which is really cool. And I was just curious kind of how you were introduced to decluttering and simplifying and like you were talking about like making room for this peace and joy and how that, depending on when you kind of stumbled across it, how it impacted your own parenting, since we're going to be talking about decluttering and parenting today. So, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I, like many others, it seems, in our field, was really drawn to it when I was little. My sister and I started decluttering, organizing, cleaning out our bedrooms, our mother's closets when we were like 9 and 6 years old. And so that was just fun for us. I don't know exactly why it came about, but when I look back on it, it was a very chaotic time in our lives because our parents were going through a contentious divorce, and then our grandparents died tragically suddenly in an accident. And so there was a lot of grief and a lot going on. And I know that as I was creating that sense of order in my outer environment, I was, trying to bring a sense of calm and order inside myself. And that way of working on myself through my home and just like needing my environment to be a real source of peace and support just stuck with me. Like that's just very essential for me. And so I'd always been creating, whether it was the college dorm room, my first apartment, whatever, I was always kind of creating that sense of order. And actually, it's so funny. I don't know why this is coming to mind, maybe because my son's graduating from this where I went to college, but I even, like in college, had my mom send all my stuff from her home. So I could like take care of, everything that was my, like all my keepsake stuff and really take care of everything that was my responsibility. But anyway, so then I pursued a master's degree in spiritual psychology, and I had this kind of aha moment where I realized, wow, I can coach people, I can counsel people through their homes. I can use the home as this vehicle and tool for self-realization and creating the life you want. And I decided to study feng shui and also started really learning about healthy home principles because I was sick a lot as a child. So I really had in my mind that I wanted that not, this is before I had kids, but I had in my mind that I wanted my kids not to sort of have that path. And I was understanding the connection between our environment and our physical health as well. And so then I took a feng shui course, and my sister says, because I'm the older sister, and my sister says, go do something. She does it. So she went and did the feng shui, and then we started working together.
Oh, that's really, really cool. Excuse
Oh, I
me.
think I missed the other
Oh
part of
yeah,
your question.
the
So
parenting part. But
yeah,
I think it's just like the breadcrumbs, that have like kind of followed you and the fact that your sister kind of did something similar and that also just kind of your background and how that influenced exactly how you were looking at the connection between home and peace and identity. So I'm done with that part. I'm going to be quiet so you can continue.
so then for my parenting, I think how this has served me is because, I think we've continued actually to sort of have our fair share of challenges. Um, and I having this clutter-free and peaceful home has just been vital for me to stay grounded and aligned and, have a sense of joy amidst challenges. And I think that obviously serves my kids, the more present we are as moms, the better we feel, the better our kids feel. I also really see how a clutter-free and organized environment created a sense of rhythm to our lives, which I also think is so comforting for kids and offers so much stability. And also the parenting is so much is around the home and these repetitive daily making meals, bath time, getting out the door. And in each of those moments, I really believe there's this opportunity for presence and connection or sort of chaos and overwhelm. And the difference is usually like, is our home working for or against us? So I think that it makes things go smoother. I also think it creates time and space so that we actually have time to do the stuff that's fun and
Yeah.
meaningful. And um, and I think in those everyday moments, the name of our business is Inspired Everyday Living. The idea being that so much of our lives is about the little everyday, and that when a home is supporting it, then there really is this potential for it to be more of a celebration or elevated. And I do feel that environment really allowed my kids to have, a magical joyful childhood, even when there was a lot of stuff going on outside the home or in our lives.
Yeah. And I love that, as far as like the home supporting you rather than us spending all of our time and energy and trying to like manage the home. I would say, we're not designed to be full-time stuff managers. Like that's not our purpose in life. And yet a lot of people feel like that. And so I really appreciate that. And then also I know that you have this connection with Kim Payne and Simplicity Parenting was one of the first parenting books I ever read. And I love that. But just as far as like the impact on our kids, to be able to have that space for joy and connection and to kind of make those memories. So one of the things that I find as I work in home with moms, especially when they have the young kids, is that they feel like the kid stuff has taken over the whole home. So they have the playroom usually, but then the stuff doesn't stay in the playroom, and we have it in the basement, in the living room, and in the hallway, and in the kids' rooms. And I am kind of a little bit different than most, is that my kids have never had like toys in their room. We live in a townhouse. They are smaller rooms, but they have their little shoebox, which is like their treasure box, and they
Mhm.
have books, and that's it. And people are like, well, I don't want to have like toys where like other things are. I'm like, well, we have designated areas for the toys too.
Mhm.
But I find like people look at me sideways when they're like, wait, your kids don't have toys in their room? But you write in the book, and I love this when you say, when children's things take over the house, children metaphorically take over our lives, which I don't think people really make that connection.
Mhm.
But I would love it if you could tell me kind of like what you think as far as, toys and kid stuff, where it would make sense to put those boundaries and kind of the impact from more of that, I guess, more of like that mental, emotional side of our homes, having all the kid stuff everywhere versus having those boundaries.
It's funny, we really are so aligned because I like that too. And everyone is unique and it depends on the space and the home and your needs, but I tend to think that children's bedrooms are a great place for the treasures and the books and like the stuffed animals,
Yeah.
and that the toys, are maybe better placed in another part of the house for a lot of reasons. But going back to this larger question, so our homes really are a reflection of consciousness and a reflection of our lives, and that's why it is this powerful tool for change and transformation. And sometimes it can be hard to see the patterns ourselves, but we have this exercise in one of our books called "What Story Is Your Home Telling?" The
Mhm.
idea being, if you don't like the story you're living, change the story your home is telling. Change your home, change your life. So let's say, for example, that you have decided that you want to your relationship is a priority, right? Like one of your goals. And I can tell you this, on this other side of the other end of the parenting journey, I think you really do want to come out of it with yourself and your relationship intact. And it's so easy to let kids just become everything, and so the toys everywhere is the reflection of that. That is the metaphor. And of course, at certain stages it just has to be that way with newborns or whatever, but I do think there's something about that compound effect, like the little steps you can take, having that intention as your thread, so that when you do come out the other side, you do have a healthier relationship with yourself, with a partner, whatever it may be. So, for example, like this is how we can use our home as a tool. Let's say, okay, I realize I do need to focus on my self-care. I need to prioritize my relationship. Well, if the kids have taken over the bedroom, that's just not supportive of a relationship, right? And it's not that the toys can never be in there. Sometimes it serves you because you're getting dressed, you have a toddler, you need to keep an eye on them, but it's not their designated home. Similarly, it's actually not the best place to have a ton of photos of your children in the bedroom because that's not conducive to intimacy and romance.
Mhm.
Maybe the bathroom is another sacred space because a big part of self care is just having that time for a bath, and it's a place for a candle and a book, not for kids' toys. Maybe it's, a nook or an office or a desk where this is about my prioritizing my passions, my interests, my hobbies, or my other work beyond parenting. So, this is exactly how we can start using our homes to support our goals. So, first we're
Mhm.
sort of clarifying what are my values, what is important, what am I working on right now? Then looking at our home to see, is there a pattern I need to undo? Like the kids have taken over, right? And and it's seen by all the stuff everywhere. And then from there, with the blank slate, okay, now how can I support it? How can I inspire myself to take that bath or to spend a little time at my desk doing some work or to connect with my partner before bed?
Mhm.
You know, that's that's how we can utilize that connection.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just did an episode about decluttering the bedroom and how, we want it to support like the main goals. And normally I recommend before you approach a space and you're kind of in that sort of planning phase, to do the three F's, which is how do I want it to feel? How do I want it to function? How do I want it to flow?
Oh, I love that.
And just sort of like, okay, is it supporting those things? And
Hmm.
especially for the bedroom, I think that's an excellent example because, and even sometimes I have like a picture. It was mostly pictures of me and my husband, but I do have like a couple of my kids, and I'm like, I think I might switch this out. I mean, I love them and everything, but
Right.
like, they're
There's a
challenging.
time and a place, right?
Time and a place. But it's those kind of things we don't always think of.
Hmm.
And then to understand, okay, well, if the main functions are rest, relaxation, sleep, and intimacy, like are the
Hmm.
things in my space supporting that? So
Hmm.
I love that. One other thing in my bedroom, which always makes me chuckle, is my husband has a pile, not so much right now, but normally a half dirty, half clean clothes pile.
Hmm.
So it's oh, well, I might wear it again. So I'm not going to hang it up, but it's not going in the hamper. And it drives me insane, of course,
Hmm.
right? So, yeah, you can have a different clutter tolerance, clutter threshold, and also organizing personalities can be very different in
Hmm.
styles. Whereas I'm always like the out of sight, out of mind, kind of clear surface. I realized, especially for a lot of the women I work with that are ADHD, out of sight literally means out of mind, and they forget that they
Hmm.
have it. And so, more of like an open concept is better for them. So, I would love it because you have an example of the hamper. So, you know what I'm talking about with this laundry business.
Yes.
But how have you been able to work with in your own family or the families you support different organizing styles so that when there are such stark differences, we're not like feeling resentful because the other person isn't like up to our standard and they're not like, oh
Hmm.
my gosh, you're impossible to live with because you need everything completely put away all the
Hmm.
time, asking for a friend because that doesn't happen in my house, right?
So, all right. So I love this. So, oh my gosh, so much comes to mind. But I think one thing that comes to mind is, something is better than nothing. I think that's just an important mantra for parents and moms, especially, it's just some decluttering is better than nothing. Like some level of organization is better than nothing. So I think that, kind of letting go of the perfectionism and doing what works for us is the most important. And I was very inspired years ago. I took a workshop with David Allen, like so many years ago. And he said there's two reasons we avoid a task. We don't know what the next step is, or we have anxiety about the next step, meaning it's too complicated or something stresses us out about it. And I find that is such an important thing to keep in mind all the time because if we're procrastinating, it's so easy to move to self judgment and think, I'm lazy, I can't do this, I'm disorganized. And it's not about that. If we can, instead of judging, we can get curious and say, what is not clear about this next step? What is not easy about it? So, for example, like if you know that if you have to put something away and it's a disorganized cabinet and you have to shove it in there, and you think when you shove it in there, something might fall on your head, or, that's like the kind of anxiety. It's not, you don't feel good about it because it's not great to treat an object that way. You also think something might fall on you. We want to kind of avoid that. And I think the best way to avoid that is to make it really, really easy to put things away. And so that what you're talking about in the book is in my family, for whatever reason, the lid on a hamper, which of course I like because it's aesthetically more appealing, is just one step too many. Like my family simply will not take up the lid and put their clothes in. The clothes will just go right on top of the lid. And so finally, I'm like, I can fight this or we can make it easy. And so we just have hampers without lids. And also, similar thing is that my family is not going to take the time to put things on a hanger. They just won't do it. So it's got to be hooks. I definitely relate, even though I appreciate the aesthetics of things being clear. I actually am someone who doesn't like to file, like I really, because it's too away for me. I really do like piles. And all of this stuff is fine as long as we've like brought it to light and made a choice about it, which is another key. We like to say the key to clutter free is to make a choice because clutter usually results from not making a decision. So better to just make a choice, decide, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to have the piles or we're going to have the hooks. And then, you can always adjust later. Nothing's
Yeah.
nothing's permanent. But I'm a big believer in go with people's organizing style, like just make it easy, better to do something rather than nothing.
Yeah, I love that because it kind of takes the perfectionism out of it, you know? It's
Hmm.
kind of like, and that's always my tendency that, like, especially, it doesn't happen very often because my kids are older and they know what I
Hmm.
do and they know that I'm very sensitive to my environment. And so I like things put away. But just knowing it doesn't have to be like this rage decluttering where like, I have to get rid of it all and this is too much, you know, just being able to take it easy. And what I've learned also with my husband is that sometimes he has a plan for something that I don't understand. So being respectful and being like, so I was just curious, this random thing that you put on the floor in the closet, is this
Yeah.
supposed to be for me? And he's like, oh yeah, that's for you to donate. And I'm like, okay,
Oh,
you know what I
yeah.
mean? So like I didn't understand his system, air quotes, for that.
Right.
So we're able to bring it to light and then
Hmm.
respectfully be like, oh, okay, well, I would be happy to do that instead of me picking it up being like, why is this on the floor? You know, so
Hmm.
there's definitely when you're living with others and you have these different tolerances, it's important. Um, One of the other questions I get all the time is when and if to involve kids in decluttering. So for me, when the kids were, I think, pretty much like preschool maybe and younger, I would remove things, as I like to say, under the cover of darkness. But I do have, and actually the laptop's being propped up on it, the treasure box, and they've had the
Hmm.
same shoebox treasure box since they were in preschool, and they make the decisions. I call it the game I call love, like, maybe no, where you start with the loves and the likes, and then they decide, right? So they've been
Hmm.
doing that forever. But I do tell parents that, you know, it does depend on your kid because some kids are more like attached to every single little thing. But for
Hmm.
the most part, like probably up to a certain age, you're good not involving them. And you make this amazing connection with Kim Payne's Governor Gardner Guide. And I was wondering if you could talk through how to use that framework to decide how and if to involve your kids in decluttering.
Sure. So Kim John Payne, the author of Simplicity Parenting, so in that book, he uses this governor, oh my gosh, Governor Gardner guide um, approach to like how to discipline your kids in a way that's like developmentally appropriate. And so I was inspired. I'm a simplicity parenting coach, and Kim is a good friend of mine. And so when I read that, I was inspired to apply that same thinking to when and how to involve children in decluttering. And so essentially, and one of Kim's big themes in his books is that our kids are overwhelmed, by too much stuff, too much media, too many choices, too many activities, just kind of the too much of everything that's kind of creating this chronic ongoing stress level in our children. And we know now from research like that the less children have in terms of stuff, that the better they sleep, the better they eat, the better they play, more cooperatively, more imaginatively, and the less overwhelmed they are. So with the decluttering, we can also, and I was guilty of this as a parent, like we can overwhelm them by giving them too many choices that aren't really developmentally appropriate. And I think it's well intentioned because we're trying to empower them. A lot of us are from the generation where we had no choices and it was that do as you're told. And so maybe we've overcompensated a little bit. And so anyway, how you apply it is at the beginning, like ages up until maybe 6 or 7, is the governor phase where you really are in charge of deciding what stays and what goes. Oh, and just to back up, there's to keep a clutter-free home, there's decluttering, which is choosing what to keep and what to let go of. There's organizing, which is finding a home for each item. And then there's what I think of as tidying, which is putting things away. So in terms of like putting things away, kids can really do that as soon as they're physically able, like whatever they can handle physically, they can be involved in putting things away. But in terms of like designating a home for items and choosing what to keep and what to let go of, this is where you can apply this Governor Gardner guide. So in the governor phase, you make the decisions. And because otherwise it's too overwhelming for a kid to decide what to keep and what to let go of. Now, of course, we want to tune into our kids' desires and their needs. So we want to, and I am totally a fan of if you're not sure, it's fine to have that opaque bin that you just label things I want to give away. And if you're not sure if they love it, you can put it in there. If they haven't, talked about it in a few months, then you can let it go. I think it's fine to have that. And then when you're in that gardener phase, just like a gardener would plant a seed, you're observing, you're sort of watching the soil, you're seeing, does it need this? Does it need water? Does it need sun? What does it need? So that's the phase where you start involving your children and you're asking them, what you think about this. Do you love it? Your system kind of thing. But you still have the ultimate say. Then you're moving them into the guide, into the teenage phase where you really do want to start handing it off to them. And with teenagers, the best thing is to inspire by example because teenagers are only going to buy into something if we're practicing what we preach. So we want to make sure we're taking care of our own clutter, but then we can guide them by connecting it with their values. So, for example, if they want to do well in school and that's important to them, it's clear desk, clear mind, or making the connection. You feel like you don't have time to go out with your friends. Well, the more organized your bedroom is, the more time you have to, spend with your friends or pursue your hobbies. So we're kind of making those connections for them and sort of guiding them.
Yeah, and the tapping into their values, I feel like is so smart because I know also when it comes to the other side of it, which is like the consumption side and like the mindful consumption, and also being able to teach kids that too, especially since this generation, well, at least with my kids, 9 and younger, it's like Amazon, they know Amazon can get it there the same day or the next day, right?
Yeah.
So why shouldn't we do that? And just talking about like, let's look at what we have. Does it make sense to even buy this in the first place? Is this something where we're just kind of think it's kind of cool, but if we wait like at least a couple days, that
Hmm.
maybe it's not really what we want? And I find that a lot of times when I'm working with parents that they were never taught how to let things go. They were never taught how to tidy or to maintain or like these
Hmm.
systems that we need for like adulting. And
Hmm.
then they're just overwhelmed and surrounded by stuff. And it's hard for them then to be able to teach their own kids. So I don't know. I feel like it is so important. And I hope that my kids at some point, maybe in their 20s, will appreciate it. Maybe you can tell me because you're a little further ahead than me on the path, whether your boys are, from what you can tell, taking some of this to heart as far as like what you
Yeah.
need to
So
teach them.
Oh, it's so interesting that you're bringing this up. I mean, and I do think some of it depends on. So, my older son, he's kind of always been on that bandwagon. If I look back, like he just is kind of, even in a young age. I remember once we went on vacation and we came back to his room and he goes, "Mommy," he goes, "I need to get rid of all this stuff." Like he just was, kind of tuned in that way. I'd say my younger son was more apt to hold on to things. But my older son now, he's been living in an apartment the last 2 years, and man, he's more dialed in than I am. Like he really is. Like on the decluttering, the time management. He's got to cook his own meals, and he's really figured it out. So I think it has worked, and he definitely. I do think that's something I did a good job with, was sort of delaying the gratification. I never made my children feel guilty for desiring something because I do think it's important to, we want our kids to not be shamed, but to have more of an abundance consciousness where I would have a conversation more, well, we could have that, but even sometimes when we couldn't, I mean, like when there was a phase where they were like, well, what about, this, I don't know, expensive car or whatever. But I would still have the conversation about, but do we really want it? Like, does that really serve us right now? And one of the techniques I used when they were younger is would use a Christmas list, even in July. So even when they were very little, I never had the issue with like freaking out in the toy store because it was just the family values. They put it on the
Yeah.
Christmas list. And you brought that up, just having a little space, because of course in the moment we really want it, and there's something about writing it down that list that satisfies that part of our brain that really wants it, and they know they've been heard and it's on this concrete list, and that allowed them to let go. So I think that it really has worked in that regard for both of them. With both of them being more conscious consumers.
Mhm.
My younger one, has a harder time letting go of things. He's just like that, but he also realizes he needs to. But so he will do it, but he'll have it, it'll build up a little bit more,
Yeah.
but then again, when he does it, he's very good at it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I
it just takes a
see
little more for him to do it.
I see glimmers of hope, So I've had even my younger son who, yeah, more apt to hold on to things, where he would come to me, Mom, I think it's time for me to go through my treasure box. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. So
Wow.
he does his piles and he
Mhm.
has like his maybes. And then I was like, yeah, because there was room in the box, but he decided some of his maybes he didn't want, even though there was
Wow.
room. And I was like,
Wow.
I'm doing something right.
Yeah, for sure.
So
That's
that was my
great.
like little parenting win, I guess. But
I think it's actually huge because I think we all have to give ourselves credit because of the way we live right now, the way things are right now with the instant shopping and the constant demands and marketing and advertising. Like you really have to work hard to not let it take over because it's so easy for it to come into our lives. And you touched on that. It really is about the prevention. That we want to kind of get out of the cycle. I mean, of course, there's always going to be some level of decluttering and always because we're growing and changing, and so there's always going to be an in and out, and we don't want it to, as you said, just be stuff managers, and that takes really not letting it in the first place, and that's something that takes a lot of vigilance because it's just too easy these days for it to just invade.
yeah. Well, one of the things you mentioned at the beginning was with your background, having the background in spiritual psychology and then also taking the feng shui course, which I love how you have implemented some of that knowledge and principles into the book because honestly, this is an area where I have no knowledge and no expertise. And sometimes I'll have people ask me, like, oh, do you use any feng shui techniques in your work? And I'm like, no, I'm sure I could learn about it. But just this idea of how our energy kind of is impacted by our stuff in our home and the energy of the objects that we are encountering, not necessarily just sentimental items. And before I had just one quick example before I let you jump in, which was that for almost 20 years, I held on to my yearbook. And then I actually like looked at it and I'm like, why am I holding on to this? Because I didn't remember pretty much anyone that signed it.
Mm-hmm.
And high school was not like the happiest time in my life. And so it was more having that mental, emotional weight, even though
Mm-hmm.
it didn't take up a lot of space.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote an article about it's called I Give You Permission to Throw Away Your Yearbook. And people were very upset. They were like, you can't throw away your yearbook. And I'm like, well, if it
I,
doesn't represent a happy time in your life, like, yes,
mm-hmm.
you can. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious how, in the work that you do and just sort of that energy that objects can give, again, that psychic emotional weight that we don't
Mm-hmm.
think about and how that impacts our decluttering process.
Great questions. And just so you know, we like to say that the number one most powerful feng shui change you can make in your life is to declutter. So you are practicing feng shui by
Great.
decluttering. Okay, so our feng shui teacher, Tara Catherine Collins, who wrote a great book. Oops, excuse me, who wrote a great book called The Western Guide to Feng Shui. She has these three kind of principles, sort of universal principles that everything is alive and everything is connected and everything is changing. So, as you were just discussing, things are alive in two ways. They're alive in the thoughts and feelings that they trigger, the memories that they spark, and also they're molecularly alive, made up of moving atoms. So everything has its own unique vibration, and it is interacting with it's affecting the energy in our home, and it's affecting our personal energy. Um, and it's so really, the heart of what we do is we really do want to live with all of the things we love, the things that really make our hearts sing and that lift up our energy. And when I'm coaching people on deciding what to keep or what to let go of, I really do believe for that reason in tuning into your body, because our bodies tell us instantly whether something's lifting us up or bringing us down. We know we either take a deep breath and we feel expanded, or we have a sinking feeling or we tense up. And so I feel it's very important that we can let that be our guide, because otherwise, like that yearbook, it's not about space at all. It's just about these kind of dings, whether it's conscious, subconscious, these sort of little drains in our environment of this stuff that is bringing us down when we really want to be lifted up. And then this other principle is that everything is connected, meaning that all of these things are made up of the same energy. And how that applies in feng shui and with decluttering is that even the stuff that is tucked away in the attic or not taking up a lot of space is still influencing all parts of our life.
Yeah.
So here's just a quick example that we all experience, which is, we're trying to get out the door in the morning because of clutter and disorganization. We can't find something, the homework, the car keys, the cell phone, whatever it is. The later it gets, everyone's stressed out. We might be short with our spouse or rush our kids or snap at them. And then, we drop them off and we're heavy hearted. And then we go to work late, coworkers annoyed, you know. So you can see how over time that clutter and disorganization of not being able to find something actually can wear on our relationship with our kids, with our spouse, with our job, which can affect our finances, right? So this is that connected piece that, and as you mentioned with the yearbook, even though it didn't take up a lot of space, but it, somewhere it's representing something that wasn't your ideal, right? It's not joyful, right? And so we want that's why, there's this expression our feng shui teacher used, there's no place to hide from feng shui eyes, right? It's all connected. And then the last principle is that everything is changing. And that is the idea that the things that everything's in constant motion, these atoms, right? So everything is changing. So the things that we loved 10 years ago, 10 months ago, 10 days ago may not be the things that we love now. And it's really important that our environment is current. We want it to support our current values, our current goals. And with children, like, this is very obvious, because when they developmentally move on, you want to match them, right? Their environment, their things need to match their new developmental phase. But sometimes we forget as adults that really we should be the same way. We're growing and evolving too, and we want things to match. So, and one more thing I'll say, because I gave the negative version of that ripple effect with everything is connected. The positive version is, this is again going back to why our homes are such a powerful tool for change, is because when you make a tiny positive change, you get that same ripple effect affecting all areas of your life. Think about just having toys out of the bedroom or the television or the pictures, and then all this, and then you're having more intimacy with your partner. That's a profound ripple effect. So it really can be some removing that yearbook. That can be a profound ripple effect of, of self-love, of saying, you know what, this didn't bring me joy. Like, this isn't matching my ideal. I'm letting it go. So
That's so helpful. Thank you for that awesome overview. And also, I think that it's that moment when we have the item and it's whether our heart is singing or sinking, right? Before our brain kicks in. Because I think
yes.
that that's the problem, because then we have all the justifications and the stories that we're telling ourselves and I should be keeping this because. And I think that that was for me for the yearbook. It was like, well, people keep their yearbooks. Like, it was like an unquestioned thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is just like what we do. And after I wrote that article, this gentleman reached out to me and he said that he had been keeping this like Boy Scout uniform from his youth, thinking, oh, my kids might want it, or my kids might think this is kind of cool or something. But it was sort of this like psychic weight on him, because I guess he had been abused while he was like at that stage of his life. And so he had the courage to be like, I'm letting this go, because even though my brain was kicking in to be like, well, I could hold on to this for a
Mm-hmm.
variety of reasons. The emotional psychic weight of this one thing that was like tucked away in his
Mm-hmm.
basement was
It's
representing this
tremendous.
like super painful
Mm-hmm.
aspect of his past. And
Mm-hmm.
then he was able to let go of that, and that just that burden being released is honestly one of the main reasons I do what I do, is that people can have these burdens that they were knowingly or unknowingly carrying
Mm-hmm.
around and be able to release that so that they can focus on the present like you're
Mm.
saying, and not being
Hmm.
kind of bogged down in that painful past. So that's just another example that really floored me because I don't really have anything of that weight or magnitude
Hmm.
necessarily, but people just keep stuff because they think they should. And then it's
Hmm.
just like this that energy being super toxic, in your home is not serving us, of course, right?
Absolutely. What a powerful story. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's an amazing story.
Well, I loved your book, obviously. I haven't read the other two, so I will have to put that, and I will put all of them in the show notes today, and as well
Thank you.
as Kim John Payne's book because I love it, and I always recommend that as like you're going to read a parenting book. If you have to read one parenting book, I
I
recommend Simplicity Parenting.
it's my recommendation too. I
Yeah, I
love it.
figured. So I would love it if you could tell us how listeners can connect with you or, about your course or anything that you want to share. And I will, of course, put everything in the show notes.
Sure. So you can connect with me on Instagram at inspired.everyday.living or my website, which will take you everywhere, which is inspiredeverydayliving.com. And my books are on Amazon. You can also find them on the website. And I'm here. And
Yay.
this has been like such a pleasure. I'm so happy to connect with you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I just, like I said, I love speaking with people and then I find out how aligned we really are.
I know. I know. It's so
So,
great.
yeah, thanks again for your time. It was a great talking with you.
Thank you.